Thank you, Richard. Today is a hot day. I heard Richard say earlier the heat index is going to be 105, and I got grass to cut, so that'll be fun today. Seen a lot of people out there cutting grass today, so I hope they staying hydrated, staying cool. Today's show brought to you by Plexus Slim. Do you or someone you know suffer from high or low blood sugar, high or low blood pressure, or being overweight? Finally, there's a product that delivers what it says. You will lose weight by burning fat, not muscle. Your blood sugar, blood pressure, cholesterol, and lipids will get to healthy levels. It will help with power over food. It helps with the desire to binge eat. Plexus Slim is an all-natural product that will help with all these issues. It has no caffeine, no stimulants. It's not a meal replacement and comes with a 60-day money-back guarantee if you're not satisfied. So give Christy a call at 985-514-4530. It's 985-514-4530. Or go to plexusslim.com/ChristyC and use ambassador number 100981 to place an order for Plexus today. Or you can call Christy at 985-514-4530 and request a 3 or 7 day sample. And while I'm talking about Plexus, I actually went and checked out their website, and they got some pretty good testimonials on here. Got one here from Rochelle. She lost 52 pounds and 9 dress sizes. She says, when I started taking the Plexus products, I weighed 185 pounds and was wearing a size 14. I used Plexus for 5 months and lost a whopping 52 pounds. I am now in a size 5. I feel great, thanks Plexus Slim. And the best part is that I haven't gained a single pound back. What an amazing product. I would recommend this to anyone. Rochelle D. So, go check out their website, plexusslim.com/ChristyC. And just read through the testimonials if you're kind of skeptical on the product. Well, this is Louisiana's Watchman Radio Program. I am Brian Bridges, your host. If you want to get in touch with me today, I got a couple ways. Email LouisianaWatchman@gmail.com. That's LouisianaWatchman@gmail.com. I'm on the Twitter sphere. You can either search Louisiana Watchman or username the number 1 LA Watchman. If you want to send in a comment, or if you got a question, or just want to say hello. Also, if you want to send me a text message, that number is 985-974-7912. 974-7912. So if you want to send me a text message in with a question or a thought or a comment. Really like to get a little feedback. Try to find out if what I'm talking about is helping you, if you like it or if you dislike it, if it's opened your eyes to things that are happening in our state or in our country or in the world for that matter. So use any one of the three. Text message 974-7912. Twitter is the number 1. LA Watchman is the username, or just search Louisiana Watchman. And email LouisianaWatchman@gmail.com. Well, they had some things this week that happened. I told you last week I was going to get into a book that I've been reading called No More National Debt by Bill Still, which I'm going to get into today, but I just want to kind of touch on a couple of things that have been happening in the news this week. Probably the biggest story is the NSA worker, Edward Snowden, kind of been coined the whistleblower, leaked out the information that NSA either has the ability or has been, which I think is the latter, been collecting phone records and emails and whatnot on American citizens. Uh, to me, it's pretty big blow to the government, and not just particularly the Obama administration, but I mean this can date back to probably back to pre 1970. There's this week I heard a talk show host talking about a Newsweek article from back in 1970, or I think it was 1970, because I think it was during the Nixon administration, that had the headline of "Who's watching us?" So this isn't something new. This isn't something that's just been going on, in the last 4 or 6 years. Something's been going on for a while, but it's finally really come to the forefront, because now the technology is here to look into what you're doing just about every minute of the day. They can gather your cell phone records. They can tap your cell phone calls. They can tap your email accounts. See what you're emailing. If you're on social networks, I mean, it's to me it'd be pretty easy for them, for the NSA, to look at what you're posting, and what your things you're stating on Facebook or Twitter or any of these other social networks. So there's some concern here about this, and it's something that we should not fall by the wayside, or the issue be turned from the subject matter that Edward Snowden revealed. The government, I guess you would say, Congress, the Department of Justice, they're trying to deflect what the real problem is to Edward Snowden being a traitor. I've heard a few representatives and the Attorney General talk about Edward Snowden being a traitor, and going after him for espionage crimes, I guess you would say. But the popular opinion that I've been reading across the country, and the world for that matter, is that Edward Snowden is a hero for leaking. I don't know if you want to say leaking or revealing or exposing this information to the American citizenry, to the world for that matter, that the government has the capability and has been tapping into email accounts and phone records and social networks on the internet and stuff like that to look into people's personal information. As this went back and forth about hero or traitor, I kind of, who calls who a traitor and who's calling who a hero? Well, this is what I kind of, bottom line that I see it, is that the people of the United States, those who believe and defend the Constitution of the United States, regard Edward Snowden as a hero, because he has exposed acts of the federal government that violate the Constitution and our Bill of Rights. Those who call Edward Snowden a traitor are mainly those people that are in government. Now, my opinion is that those people in government, maybe not all of them, but a very sizable amount, I don't think they believe in the Constitution anymore. They believe in power, political power, and ruling over us. So when I read articles, people talking about the NSA whistleblower, and they use the word traitor, I automatically look at who is this person and what is their position, if it's in government, and if it is in government and they call him a traitor, well, to me, that person is not a supporter or defender of the Constitution. That there is an agenda that this person is trying to cover up. And if I read articles that regard Edward Snowden as a hero, which there are people in Hong Kong that are protesting, I guess the Chinese government to protect Edward Snowden from extradition to the United States. To me, those who call Edward Snowden a hero are actually clinging to the Constitution, to the Bill of Rights, defending it, and expressing so many words in articles and stuff and whatnot, are trying to defend Edward Snowden and what he did. It's a big issue that's going back and forth today. To me, the media is just they're gonna try to play Edward Snowden as a traitor, criminalize him, and I guess try to get him back into the United States. The authorities try to get him back into the United States to answer the charges of, I don't know what you want to, espionage or treason. So anyway, we'll see how that goes. The other issue is kind of taking a back burner this week is the IRS. And the targeting of conservative groups and organizations that something was it to not give them exempt status, tax status because of their conservative views. This is something that like I said, it's taking the back burner this week, and I think Washington D.C. is trying to sweep this thing under the rug. It's in my opinion, the income tax is unconstitutional, and that's my opinion. I'm not going to go into the legal arguments about it right now or today, but there are cases where people took the IRS to court for on the basis of the income tax being unconstitutional, and have won. But it was a hard road for these people to finally get into a courtroom to be judged by their peers, to ultimately find out that the IRS has no authority to collect income taxes from individuals. But anyway, that's something for another day. Today, what I want to get into is No More National Debt by Bill Still. There's a quotation I'd like to read to you. Let me find it. Okay. The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. It's a pretty short quote, but it's pretty powerful. And it's a Bible verse. It's Proverbs 22:7. I'll read it again to you. The rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. Now, why do I read this verse? Because our money system today, these bills that we call dollars that we carry in our pocket, they are basically loan receipts to the Federal Reserve. The United States government does not own our dollar bills. If you look on the back of the dollar bill, it will say Federal Reserve note. That is property of the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve created that dollar bill, and they created it out of nothing. It was created as a result of a loan application being submitted to the Federal Reserve by our federal government, by Congress. The talk of our national debt and reducing our national debt is a farce, because the money to pay down the national debt is a loan in itself. And it's it's kind of confusing, which the book, No More National Debt, kind of lays out what the dollar is, what the Federal Reserve is, and the inherent problems that we have today as a result of the Federal Reserve. One of the things that I've learned, I learned some time ago about the Federal Reserve, and that it's not a government entity. It's actually private, and it's international banks that consist of the Federal Reserve. And I say international banks. That's very important to remember, because these banks, they have no loyalty to any country or any flag. Their only loyalty is to their stockholders, and be it the dollar bill or whatever currency that they may be using, but it's primarily the dollar. So what they do, the policies that they pass and enforce, is not necessarily in the best interest of the United States, but it's going to be in the best interest of the stockholders of the banks that make up the Federal Reserve. In the book, No More National Debt, Bill Still explains how, like I said, it was something I used to believe in a long time ago, that we needed to get back to the gold standard, that let our money be backed by gold. Well, what I've learned since knowing what the Federal Reserve really is, and reading up on just history of currency and how it affected countries and people, what I've discovered is that even backing our money by gold is not the right path, because the government cannot control the quantity of gold on the market, and that's the big key, is the quantity. Like I said, the federal government has no control over that, and if they can't control the quantity, then they can't control the value. And if you would tie the dollar to gold, there would be no way that Congress could regulate the value of that dollar, because they cannot regulate the value of gold. It's a commodity. It's traded on the open market worldwide, and it fluctuates. So Bill Still's suggestion is that the currency should be created and controlled by the government, and that the currency it's property of the government, thereby property of the people. And in doing that, it would be a check and balance between the people, keeping Congress in check as far as how much money it creates. We would no longer have to borrow money with interest attached to it, because that's what Congress does today. Every dollar that's spent by Congress is borrowed. This idea, you got to get out this mindset that you pay taxes, and those tax dollars are going towards funding federal programs, national defense, or whatever. It's not true. The taxes that we pay, and say tariffs that the federal government may collect, doesn't go towards a budget. It goes towards paying interest on the loan that the government makes from the Federal Reserve to fund the budget. That's how the system works. So the national debt will never will never be paid off because we have to borrow money into existence in order to fund our government. And the collateral, it's a loan. There's collateral involved. The collateral is me and you, the taxpayer. And our taxes go to paying the interest on that loan that the government makes from the Federal Reserve. What's the bigger problem was this, and if anybody's ever had a credit card and actually got their balance a little bit too high where it became a burden to try to pay it back, the interest compounds on that balance. It works the same way with the money that Congress borrows from the Federal Reserve. This interest gets compounded. That's why our national debt is shooting up exponentially. I mean, it's going to hit a point where it's going to go through the roof. I mean, I think right now we had 17 trillion, and there's a lot of factors that are being left out in that number. You could say 17 trillion is the principal balance. That doesn't include the interest on the principal. I've heard numbers in the range of 200 trillion that we owe the Federal Reserve. It's pretty alarming when you get out the mindset that the government owns and controls the currency, and that it's a private bank that owns and creates it, and they create it. They do not have that. They don't have anything of value sitting in their vaults that equate to the amount of money that's floating around as debt or as loans given out. They don't have that. It's a term that the bankers have been using for hundreds of years, called fractional reserve lending. And Bill Still goes into his book, No More National Debt, and he explains that it's really the root cause of our money problems. This fractional reserve lending. A 100% reserve means that, I guess in bank terms, 100% reserve means that if I got $100, if I'm a bank and I got $100 in my bank, I can loan out $100. I have 100% reserve. I can lend that money out. What fractional reserve lending does is you can have that. I can have that $100 in the bank. It's hard asset, but I fraction it out and I multiply it out. I leverage it by 10, and what I end up doing is I'm lending out $900. So I'm creating $900 out of nothing, even though I still got that $100 in the bank. It's hard assets, but I'm lending out $900, and I'm lending it out in checkbook money. That's not real dollars. It's numbers on a piece of paper, and you can use it like money, and be it on a credit card or just writing checks out. Now here's the thing. You borrow. I get nine people to borrow $100 each from me, the bank, and they turn around and redeposit that money back into my bank as checkbook money. Well, now on my ledger, instead of showing $100, I am now showing $1,000 on the ledger. So I'm looking at now I have $1,000 in currency, hard assets sitting in my bank. So what do? I turn around. I need to back up because I was using $900. I can turn around and loan out $9,000, and I've inflated my balance by 10 again. This is what fractional reserve lending is. I don't have those hard assets in the bank. All I had was $100, and I still got $100. Everything else above that is money created out of nothing, and I'm loaning it out, and I'm charging interest on that money, and I'm collecting interest. This is the same thing what the Federal Reserve is doing. They created money out of nothing. They've charged interest to the government, to the people. In return, the Federal Reserve is holding our money via Treasury bonds, and the Federal Reserve's ledger will show that now they have, they got nothing. They loan out $1 trillion. They now have $1 trillion worth of Treasury bonds in their vault or in their computer system, and then they can turn around and say, well, now we got $1 trillion. Now we can loan out 10 times that. And they loan out 10 times that, and then it comes back in as Treasury bonds. Now they got, say, 10 trillion in Treasury bonds, which shows to them as an asset. So now they can multiply it up. They can loan out 10 times that, and it just keeps going and going and going. And that's why our national debt, it keeps going and going and going. But Bill Still, he argues that the government has the right to create its money, create its own currency interest-free. It doesn't have to be backed by anything, just backed by the faith and credit of the government of the United States, which is basically what we have on this system now of Federal Reserve notes, but the difference is that we got to pay interest on our dollar bills. And, there's a hidden tax involved in that, and that the more dollar bills that get floated out into the economy, it decreases the value of the purchasing power of that dollar bill. You may have noticed since 2008 that prices on things have gone up. It's not because the cost of it's going up. It's because the value of our dollar has decreased. So Bill Still says we can create our own money, free of interest, control the inflation or the deflation of our money, and the government can fund their budget by simply creating the money into existence. There are checks and balances involved in doing that. Congress would be directly answerable to the people. So, if the Congress wanted to, out of the blue, just create $6 trillion to fund the budget, they couldn't do that because the back effect of doing that would be deflation in the dollar. And we wouldn't be able to, instead of, a pack of gum costing you $1, it would cost you $3. Congress would be directly responsible for doing that. And it would be a backlash on the members of Congress for creating as much money as they see fit to, or that they want to. So there's a natural balance that's involved there. Bill Still mentions that there is a country at the very beginning of his book, the States of Guernsey, which falls under the dependency of the British Crown, and he talks about how back in the early 1800s, Guernsey was heavily in debt, taking loans out from banks to fund, their projects and their budget. And it got to the point where Guernsey, they were spending more than what they were taking in. And it was beginning to compound, and it was compounding, and it got to the point where they could not borrow any more money to fund their budget and their needs, and the country started falling into disarray. Roads started becoming in disrepair, and buildings were crumbling and stuff like that. Well, what the government of Guernsey decided to do. And this is this is from No More National Debt regarding the States of Guernsey. The committee recommends that the expense should be met by the issue of states notes of £1 sterling to the value of 6 thousand pounds sterling, and that these notes will be available not only for the payment of the new market, but also the Tortoval Church, roads to construct, and other expenses of the states. So what Guernsey started doing was just started printing up their own currency. The book goes on. The committee argued that there was little to fear from inflation because the local banks already had 50,000 pounds of sterling of their money in circulation. As a further protection against inflation, the overly cautious citizens of Guernsey placed redemption dates on the notes of April 1817, October 1817, and April 1818. In other words, these notes were good for payments of taxes and good as regular money in circulation until the expiration date was reached. At that time, the notes would no longer be legal tender and the state would destroy them. And there was a reference there to the Guernsey experiment, which is a paper written by Olive Grubiak. But so what Guernsey did was that they started printing their own currency. It wasn't backed by anything. It was fiat money. And what made it valuable was that it could be used to pay taxes. Automatically, the people of Guernsey began accepting these notes, these state government notes, as money because they could turn around and use it to pay their taxes, be it property tax or sales tax or whatnot. The book goes on. During the entire experiment in Guernsey from 1817 to date, there has at no time been a threat of inflation from the creation of states' notes. At all times, the states were very careful in the issue and cancellation of notes according to their ability and requirements. He goes on to say, any visitor to Guernsey is immediately impressed by the vast difference in prices between the island and the mainland in Britain. Thanks to the exceptionally low taxation and import duties, Guernsey enjoys low prices, plenty of money, and a high standard of living. In fact, Guernsey can afford to leave worries about inflation to the debt-ridden mainland. Ellen Brown wrote, Guernsey has an income tax, but the tax is relatively low, a flat 20%, and it is simple and loophole-free. It has no inheritance tax, no capital gains tax, and no federal debt. Commercial banks service private lending, but the government itself never goes into debt. When it wants to create some public work or service, it just issues the money it needs to pay for the work. The Guernsey government has been issuing its own money for nearly 2 centuries. During that time, the money supply has mushroomed to about 25 times its original size, yet the economy has not been troubled by price inflation, and it has remained prosperous and stable. So, Bill still points this out because it's an experiment where national money, government money, actually works better than gold-backed money, and it's money that's not borrowed from banks. It has no interest attached to it, and it's been working for 200 years now. It's the so-called experiment. I don't know how long it has to happen before it's not called an experiment anymore. The book goes on. There was something he goes into it. Chapter 4 talks about economic myths, and he states in chapter 4, if you only read 2 more pages of this book, let me set you straight on these 3 great misconceptions, because until a majority of the voters of any nation understand that these 3 popular notions are false, we cannot hope to fix our economies. Number 1, reducing our governmental spending is not a politically viable solution. Any reductions will be temporary because the national debt is now compounding at an unsustainable rate. A far more important and more basic change is needed. Number 2, ending the Fed is not the solution. And number 3, returning to gold-backed money is not the solution. Trying to reduce government spending is bad because it's a compounding issue. If you stop the spending, the whole pyramid comes down because you can't. The government won't be able to pay back the interest. Ending the Fed is not the solution. because you wouldn't kill the fractional reserve lending aspect just by killing the Fed. Gold-backed money. A lot of people believe that it's gold-backed, having money backed by gold is going to be the answer. On page 18 of No More National Debt, Bill Still states, history has clearly shown that gold-backed money doesn't work. It has always worked against freedom and governance by self-determination. There has never been a time in the last 1,000 years when gold money has worked to enrich the middle class, reduce serfdom, and empower freedom. Is gold reliable and free from manipulation? He says, heck no. Ask anyone who follows that market regularly. It is awash in manipulation and even out-and-out fraud. So, like I stated earlier, gold is something that the value can be controlled either by the quantity being put on the market. Basically, it's just by the quantity, by controlling the quantity that is offered on the market for sale. You can control the price of gold. If you hold back the quantity being put on the market, the price of gold is going to be higher. If you flood the market with gold to be sold, it's going to bring the price down. Albert Einstein commented on gold, the gold standard. States here, this is going back to 1931. Seeing the depression deepen worldwide, Einstein had deduced that gold money was the problem and even proposed in basic form the correct solution. The gold standard, this is Einstein, the gold standard has, in my opinion, the serious disadvantage that a shortage in the supply of gold automatically leads to a contraction of credit and also of the amount of currency in circulation. The natural remedies to our troubles are, in my opinion, control of the amount of money in circulation and of the volume of credit in such a way as to keep the price level steady, abolishing any monetary standard. So Einstein seen the problem with having a currency backed by gold. You cannot control the value of gold. Let's see. On page 23, Still states, in a gold money system, bankers own most of the gold and they just manipulate the amount of gold they loan out, thereby controlling the quantity of money and the politics of the nation as well. And he says, remember, gold is concentrated wealth. Most people don't, up to recent years, most people didn't keep gold. You kept dollar bills. It's only the very rich that have gold in possession because they understand that. Let's go back. Those who have gold know that the rich ruleth over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. They understand that. That's why they got the gold. There was a chapter in here where he actually throws some Bible verses into this interest-bearing money that we have, and he gives us a few verses. One of them being Deuteronomy, chapter 23, starting at verse 19. And this involves usury, which the definition of usury is the lending of money with interest or exorbitant interest rates. Interest in excess of a legal rate charged to a borrower for the use of money. So anyway, this is what Deuteronomy 23:19 in the Authorized Bible says. Thou shalt not lend upon usury to thy brother, usury of money, usury of victuals, usury of anything that is lent upon usury. Unto a stranger thou mayest lend upon usury, but unto thy brother thou shalt not lend upon usury, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all that thou settest thine hand to in the land whither thou goest to possess it. When thou shalt... I was getting ready to go on a roll. Another verse that he uses is Exodus chapter 22, verse 25. If thou lend money to any of my people that is poor by thee, thou shalt not be to him as a usurer, neither shalt thou lay upon him usury. And then he gets into, there's a section here talking about the money changers in the temple. I'm going to read, this is page 66 from No More National Debt. Money changers in the temple. Driving the money changers from the Temple of Solomon was the one and only time that Jesus used force or direct action during his ministry. Why? What was so important about their activities? When the Jews came to Jerusalem to pay their temple tax to support the priesthood, they could only pay it with the half shekel of the sanctuary. This was a special coin, a half ounce of pure silver. It was the only coin of assured weight and purity, and therefore the only coinage acceptable to God. But these temple half shekels were not plentiful. The money changers, having most of the money anyway, were soon able to corner the market on these coins. Then they raised the price of them, just like any other commodity, to whatever the market would bear. When the Jews came to the temple, they were also required to sacrifice an unblemished dove or other animal. Since it was inconvenient for the money of the out-of-town visitors to carry their sacrifices with them on their journey to Jerusalem, they had to purchase them when they arrived at the temple. Naturally, these sacrifices could only be purchased with the unblemished half shekels of the sanctuary, and once again, money changers artificially inflated the price. So, what Jesus objected to was not the normal banking business of the day, namely exchanging foreign money for local money, but doubling the price of the coins above their normal tax-paying value because the money changers held a monopoly on a required form of precious metal coin. In other words, the money changers were stealing from the poorest Jews on their holiest ground. Now, in the book of Mark, chapter 11, verse 15, it says, "And they come to Jerusalem, and Jesus went into the temple, and began to cast out them that sold and bought in the temple, and overthrew the tables of the money changers, and the seats of them that sold doves." Back to the book. F.R. Birch provided an interesting perspective on Christ's action in his book, Money in Its True Function. As long as Christ confined his teachings to the realm of morality and righteousness, he was undisturbed. It was not till he assailed the established economic system and cast out the profiteers and overthrew the tables of money changers that he was doomed. Well, verse 18 in the book of Mark says, this is after Jesus ran the money changers out the temple. It says, "And the scribes and chief priests heard it and sought how they might destroy him, for they feared him, because all the people was astonished at his doctrine." So it was at that point that the Pharisees decided, we need to get rid of Jesus. He's messing up our business. Getting close to the end. The book goes on early Christian attitudes. After Christ's death, the church maintained an anti-usury policy for hundreds of years. Usurers were not to be admitted to communion or receive a Christian burial, and according to Ashley's English Economic History, members of the clergy taking alms from a usurer were automatically suspended until they had spoken to their bishop. Also, the wills of usurers who did not make restitution were considered invalid, and any government official who did not make them return their ill-gotten gain would be excommunicated. Martin Luther said usurers should be hanging from the gallows, and John Calvin agreed. Calvin states, "For we altogether condemn usuries. We shall impose severer restrictions upon the consciences than the Lord himself desired." In England, 900 A.D., King Alfred implemented a law that moneylenders who took usury would forfeit all their possessions to the king. By 1050 A.D., King Edward the Confessor added that the usurer would be declared an outlaw and banished from England, and Edward III made usury a capital crime. So, and he goes further down in the book, he still states, what constitutes usury in today's secular non-Christian world? Since nowhere else does the Bible define it, 12% per year must certainly be considered usury, as would credit card interest, which usually runs around 18% per annum. And then he goes on a few sentences down. The Federal Reserve, by law, usurers create money out of nothing. That's the infinite rate of interest. The Federal Reserve creates the money and then loans it out at interest. So, you could pretty much say that the Federal Reserve is violating the teachings in the Bible. So let's see. There's one more little paragraph here. You can debate all you want about whether 6% or 10% or 12% interest constitutes usury. That's not the point. The worst abuse by far in our money system is the rate of interest charged by our central bank, the Federal Reserve, when it loans our government money at far greater than 12% or even 18% interest. It loans us money it creates out of thin air, out of nothing. Now that's usury. So, I've gotten a little bit into the book today. Did not get as far as I wanted to because I basically rambled too much in the beginning of the show. So I'm gonna get into it next week. I'm gonna talk more about this book. It's called No More National Debt. It's by Bill Still. He's also got a film that he just released. In fact, I just got the DVD in early this week, and I watched it, and it's really good. It's called, let's see what I got down here. Can't remember what it's called. Jekyll Island, The History of the Federal Reserve. If you go to the website, JekyllIsland-themovie.com, you can order the DVD from there, and I highly recommend you do it because it really will open up your eyes to what's going on in our country, and a lot of problems that we're facing today are because of what the money changers have done and the power that they have been given by our government. So anyway, today's show is brought to you by Plexus Slim. According to the Centers of Disease Control, 8 out of 10 Americans over 25 are overweight. 174 million Americans are overweight or obese. The worldwide number is expected to double by 2030. 25.8 million children and adults in the United States, that's 8.3% of the population, have diabetes. If you're like millions of others, you've probably tried different diets and diet pills but never got the results you wanted. Finally, there's an all-natural healthy solution to help you lose weight. The synergistic effect of Plexus Slim and Accelerator taken together can help you lose more weight faster than you ever thought possible. Experience quick results and keep the weight off. People around the country are experiencing amazing results too. So give Christy a call, 985-514-4530, 985-514-4530, and order some Plexus today. Or you can go to the website, which is plexusslim.com/Christy C. Her ambassador number is 100981. You go there to place an order, or like I said, go there and click on testimonials. There's a bunch of testimonies from people that have used Plexus Slim, have lost weight, and feel great. I was really impressed by the testimonials that I was reading there. So, go to the website, plexusslim.com/Christy C, or call Christy, 985-514-4530. Well, that's going to do it for me. Like I said, I've always say, I hope you learned something from what I've talked about today. I hope it's raised more questions to things that are happening in our state and in our country. If you want to contact me, if you have comments or questions, you can text me at 985-974-7912. It's 985-974-7912. Or you can email me at Louisiana Watchman @gmail.com. Or if you want to, if you're into the Twitter sphere thing, you can search Louisiana Watchman or username #1 LA Watchman and send me a tweet. So, I hope you enjoyed the show today. I will be back next week where we'll talk more about No More National Debt with Bill Still. Y'all try to stay cool today. Don't get overheated. Until then, I'm Brian Bridges. This is Louisiana's Watchman Radio Program.